Hi, Mom. It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I'm Faith-Chirima, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your experiences today. The purpose of our conversation today is to get to know you better and understand your background, interests, and goals. To start off things, could you share a little about your journey so far and what led you to where you are today?
Okay, thank you, Faith. So, I am Mrs. Shurima. I'm a mother of a dozen children. I'm a fundi and an ambassador of Christ. So, my journey started way back in Zimbabwe, Mberengwa to be specific. That's where I was born. That's where I did my schooling. That's where I got married. That's where everything, like the person who I am today, it all started there, especially because I had parents who really wanted me to go beyond the expectations of a girl child in any society and community. So they did their best to ensure that gender will never discriminate me. Even the schools that I went to prepared me to be someone who can really be a person that can adjust and adapt to any environment, even beyond Zimbabwe. So I think in a nutshell, that's it.
All right, that's really interesting. I'd like to dive deeper into specific experiences and topics. So the first topic I want to dive into is family dynamics and structure.
Okay.
So the first question I want to ask you today is that what was your family like growing up? Did you have a big family or a small one?
Okay, I was born in a family of 7, 2 girls, 5 boys. My other sister went to be with the Lord October 2002. So that left me like the only girl child in the family. My parents loved me with all that they could, with the love that they could master. So my brothers, we are quite a close-knit family with my brothers because we just grew up like that, though much of my growing up was in boarding schools. My parents were fortunate enough at least to ensure that all of us, including my brothers, we had quality education. We grew up in boarding schools. That's where we did our schooling. So in terms of the social structure, I would love to say that it was a close-knit family where even I learned a lot beyond like the dynamics of my own family. I also learned at an early stage that it actually takes a village to raise a child. I grew up in a family where we had lots of uncles and aunties, where everything like was done in a setup that you would consider really this is the future of any family that that might be around. So I grew up among many people, people from my father's side, people from my mom's side, and it was quite like we could mix and mingle without any problems. Even today, you will see that I don't have any problem of being ostracized or being a renegade or something like that. It's just the part and parcel of me. It's in me actually to know that my life actually is not an island type of life. A life is made of other people. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. That's what you can say, the philosophy of life. So I can say that even, it taught us especially a lot. There were Christmases and New Year's where people come together, where people would dance, where people would do all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so I can talk, but that's the easy short of it.
All right, that's great to know. And all right, also, what was your family's socio-economic status like when you were growing up?
I grew up a very much privileged child where I never lacked anything, where I am proud, I'm braggadociously saying this, though it might be offensive to some, that I never lacked any good thing from my parents. My mom was a hands-on business person and she owned some businesses. My father was a headmaster of a mission school. So growing up at a mission actually was more than a privilege. It was an honor actually to be raised and groomed and nurtured by my parents. So yeah, that's it to answer your question.
Wow, that's good to know. So now we're going to dive into another topic. So we're going to be talking about the education system back in her days. So what was the education system like in Zimbabwe when you were growing up? Was it similar or different from the system today?
I think I can safely say that it's quite different from the education that is in the classrooms today. It was mainly the Cambridge curriculum. I wouldn't want to do a deep comparison of the two, but I think it had more value and could open international doors for anyone. And it's a type of education where you would know that even a grade Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4, they could actually speak using a very good command of English. Our teachers mainly were expatriates, they were trained even overseas, and they could deliver in a committed way. They could actually, education was sort of for teachers, it was a calling. It's not like nowadays where you can say that in other departments or other qualifications I can't just fit in, so I can go to a teacher's college, then I can find something to do. Actually, if you'd find a teacher in a classroom, it was that type of a teacher who really could give their all to the kids, and they benefited a lot. So I would safely say that education was indeed excellent, very excellent. And the pass rates were always high, and most parents could afford actually to put their kids through to boarding schools. So if you can see a country or a scenario where I can say that, average people or layman people can send their kids to boarding schools, it shows the economy was good, supporting the education system that way.
Wow. You had made a point about the teachers at those times. I wanted to ask, did you have any notable teachers or mentors who made a significant impact on your education?
Yeah, I would love to say that I loved my English language teacher. That's why maybe I majored in English in 3 degrees. So I loved literature the most, like, the African authors. Even some chapters I could just recite back to back, Reading is something that I love doing. Even before I fall asleep, you find me that I have actually a stack of books I can read online. So I loved reading. I loved even writing. You see, I have so many. I diarize almost everything. I have a gratitude journal, so that emanated from my love for English. I loved my science teachers. They were from USA. They were a couple. So, we would do our lessons were beyond the classroom. You learn, and then the practical side as well is just, there was a balance between the theory and the practicals. So I can say that, it was quite an enjoyable journey for you to be a student, because they inspired me a lot, inspired all other learners. Also, I think I must add that, the education system then, there was really an opportunity for the underprivileged, for the handicapped, the disabled, to actually live among other people, normal people, to say. So it was like a close-knit community in the education system, whereby if you were visually impaired, no one will say you are blind, you cannot afford, better education, to say in a better school or something like that. People who grew up like, those I learned with, they will know that I loved reading to those students. They were just, I felt for them. I could be empathetic enough always to share off my study and make sure that in the process I also make them benefit in the education system by reading out to them, by making sure that I interpret, subject content to my best ability, so that they are not left behind.
Wow, that's very inspiring. So now we're going to dive into another topic about the economy or currency when she was growing up in Zimbabwe. So first question regarding this topic, what was the economy like in Zimbabwe when you were growing up? Was it strong or was it struggling?
Thank you so much for that question, because it's a question that today men would wonder was Zimbabwe like this all along, or something went south somewhere? So I would love to say that there was not a mass production of paper money. Money was money. But the currency was quite strong, to say the truth. You could find, that's why I think taking you back, that even an average person could send their children to very good boarding schools. We could afford the basics, the necessities. So you find that if an average family could afford like decent meals, send their kids to school to get quality education, that definitely speaks something about the currency, about the economy of a country. So it was quite strong, and most people could afford, their lifestyles, and something like, where even I can say maybe the economy was mainly for people in the villages, predominantly agricultural, where you will find that maybe women, some children, they will be in the fields when it's the planting season, the harvesting season, whilst the fathers are in towns, even in South Africa and beyond, trying to make ends meet so that they can send money back home. But be that as it may, I think I can say that it was quite a very stable economy.
You pointed out how your family made ends meet. So I wanted to ask, how did your family make ends meet? Did they have a small business or work for someone else during that time?
My father worked for the Department of Education, Ministry of Education, so for until his retirement, even beyond retirement, they called him back for him to be a resident examiner, monitoring examinations from home when it's examination time. So that's the level of impact that he made in the Department of Education, so that even beyond retirement, they still wanted him back. My mother was a very good businesswoman even to date.
Wow. So now we're going to dive into another topic, which is the mode of transport back then. So what were the primary modes of transportation when you were growing up? Were they cars, buses, bicycles, or something else?
Most of the people would just use they were pedestrians, like in villages, but in towns you'll find varied transport modes, from those bicycles, the bikes, and the buses, all manner of transport, the trains. But if you were in the village, you find that such type of transport, maybe it was only a privilege for some people to own cars. So you find that, forgive me, I'm going to put some Shona words there. So when you chekerera, so no masambo, then you make your way no mapani, going wherever I'll be going. There was coach cards in Goro, Madondi, like my mom. Let me just check, it's nostalgic. I love talking about that. So we had go-go and steamboat as the junkies that would just do the general errands for the family. And my father was the first person in the clan in his village to own a brand new car, to be officially licensed, not buying license like what other people are doing today. So he was sort of a role model for many. So you find that there were cars, there were buses, but those buses, they will, if you were to travel to the nearest town, you'll need to, by midnight, you will be up, because most buses, they will take off from 1 to 3 a.m. Then they reach the nearest town at 6 a.m. Can you imagine? Then you have to wait for the shops maybe to be open at 8. But that was then, and so not much of airports. Airports, you see them in Bulawayo, in Harare. As from the Midlands province, there wasn't much of, interaction with aeroplanes, with the trains. You see those in bigger cities.
All right. And were there any challenges or limitations to transportation back then? How did people overcome them?
Transport was very much affordable, as everything else was affordable. So there wasn't much of, there was no whatever associated with the transport means. If you really wanted a bus, you'll get a bus. If you wanted a car, you will get a car. So I don't think there were any challenges to transport modes.
All right.
Yes.
Let's talk about hills or mountains or geographical features growing up in Zimbabwe. So, what were some of the notable hills or mountains in your area growing up? Did you have a favorite spot to explore?
You see, if you go where my parents' dwellings are, you'll find that normally people will build their accommodation or houses just like, below the hills or the mountain or close to hills and mountains. I think they say it was because it was a defense mechanism that way. But notable hills, mountains around me as I was growing up, it's Gwaruzenkwe, it's Nyenjere, it's Mtuzibu, it's Janasi. Further, you see that some of these hills and mountains actually they were myths, that people have demystified today to say that sometimes if you climb highest certain mountains, there are rituals that had to be done first for you to come back alive. Otherwise, you'll just be enveloped maybe in a mist and you are gone. So those few hills that I've said and recalled are just some of the few, but there are quite many because most accommodation establishments were just erected under hills or maybe next to mountains and hills.
In terms of notable rivers, were there any notable rivers in your area growing up that you had a favorite spot to visit or explore?
Yes, actually halfway from the main road to my parents' place, you see there is one Wabeni Ochaira where one day one of my brothers who comes after me nearly drowned because we would just follow others to go and swim, and we were not sure, as people who were always at a mission where the scenario is quite different. So when aunties and uncles will go there, they will just follow. So he tried to swim and he couldn't, and unfortunately enough he was caught before he drowned. So there was Govarekwa Shumba from Ruhushe Primary School where people have, if it's the rain season, they'll have to jump over for you to be able to connect to the nearest primary school.
I see. So we're going to dive into another topic now, which I personally really wanted to know about. It's in terms of edible fruits growing up in Zimbabwe. What were some of your favorite fruits growing up in Zimbabwe? Did you have access to a variety of fruits?
Yeah, mainly wild fruits, especially if we were to leave the mission to go visit my parents, say home. There you'll find, I'll name them in Shona, because most of them I don't know what they are called like in other languages, but you'll find Matobwe, you'll find Nyi. Matobwe is your African chewing gum. You'll find Nyi, Shuma, you'll find like Nengeni, you'll find Chechete, or Risotto. I know it's new to you because you have never come across them maybe, but I have to mention them so that in future you just know for knowledge's sake. There was Bubunu, Ruguru, Sosoti, Matamba, Chechen. You see, even the names is quite like strange to you. So wild grapes, Mavonde, out of that white stuff, you could actually gather that and make something like glue, like make something glue-like out of it. That glue-like stuff, you can actually now use something to trap like birds with. So birds in the process will become your delicious relish. There was Mkamba Masan and all that. So there were lots of wild fruits for people to enjoy.
That's great. In terms of edible plants growing up in Zimbabwe, what were some of the edible plants that you grew up with in Zimbabwe? Did you have a favorite plant-based dish or?
Yeah, I think moving from the normal vegetable type of edible plants, I really enjoyed, we grew up with my grandmother. She was just part and parcel of us until she passed on to glory. So when from the mission, she would just take you maybe to the fields and show you rude, the gusha, the mtsine, the mchacha, hoa, so many types. That's your mushroom, bufirifiti, neds, and all that. There were some called the hoampego. Those ones, when you eat them or you accidentally pick, like, you know, the normal type of mushroom, and they are part and parcel of the normal ones, you will eat and surely die. But sometimes they will dry these edible plants, you know, so that they have to prepare that for relish, especially for the dry season.
All right, let's talk about edible insects growing up in Zimbabwe. How did your family typically prepare and consume edible insects? Do you have any traditional recipes you want to share?
So edible insects, I think it's my granny who showed me such type, and she really loved them. Though to us they seemed like scary creatures, they were actually creatures, not something to delight in eating or something like that. So there was Ritonono. These ones will be found like when it's planting season, when you have your grains coming out and all that. There was like makugwe. Makugwe, do you know what? They will actually, I think those are crickets. So you know that when you dig them up, they'll actually have two holes, one going this way, one that way. If it's not in the field, they have actually fields inside the hole, then they will be at home. So you know that if it's not this way, then it's definitely that way. So there was a Majuru, Eruhani, there was Mandere, and Marshall, several types. Then there was Farara, those ones that when there's too much light, sometimes they gather around, and from nowhere in the morning, you'll find that there are plenty of those. So people actually roast and cook nicely, then they can make delicious meals out of that.
Wow, that's very interesting. So let's talk about traveling to cities back then. How often did you travel to cities when you were growing up? What were some of the cities that you have visited?
Okay, growing up, we actually at school, there were some excursions, the trips, where it was like we could go to Masvingo, Bulawayo, we could go to Kwekwe, Gweru, we could go to Harare. Any city that had tourist attraction centers, those were like, you know, educational as well. So definitely the school will organize a trip when we go. Not forgetting that my father every holiday would take us on a family trip, and that's nice. So many photos of my father, my mom. They would take us along, all the 7 of us. Then we'll book in a hotel somewhere, then we'll enjoy. So I really loved growing up that way, because I have very fond memories of my childhood where my parents will make extra effort that, you know, we grow up having the exposure that's needed. Because it's one thing that just to be growing up in a small place, a tiny village, then you don't have the exposure that those that, you know, have a taste of both cities and villages enjoy. So you become a better person if you visit people and you see different places from where you grew up and stay. You are actually opening your eyes to so many things and you learn a lot.
In terms of what you said, how did traveling to cities impact your life or broaden your perspectives?
Actually, when I was in Form 6, that's your matric level in South Africa, I would go to Gweru where my father will pay for my trips there so that I can have the whole holiday going to libraries. City libraries had rich resources, a variety of information and books. You know, we didn't have like knowledge to Google on the phone then. The phones that were there, they were not actually compatible with you guys. What you have, just education and content on your fingertips. So you find that, you know, people just go to cities if they are basics, or maybe if teachers get paid, they will need to go to the bank. So it was mainly banking, maybe it was mainly shopping. it was mainly for just things to do with the economics and all that. But apart from that, if there was no need for you to indulge in such things, you would be quite content at home, because there will be like, growth points. There were townships near you where you see that you can actually get your groceries from there. So you see that's why my mom started the shops, the liquor, the whatever, as a business, because it was thriving then. So we used to go to a place called the Kwamdwe for the chigayo or milling, to get your pap meal. And sometimes you go to Ruzengwe, Jeka, Danga, Pumula. Those were the places that we were established as townships, as growth points, some Mataga near us. So yeah, everything was within reach. But if you wanted more and more stuff, you could actually take a bus or any mode of transport and go to the nearest city.
Wow, that's very interesting to know. So now we dive into another topic, which is water sources. What were some of the primary water sources in your area growing up?
There were just the rivers, there were streams, there were Zitubu, Chavaskana, Utsime kwa Chifesani, Ravasekuru Kubani, Chiborani Verikwatera, and Chimwe irrigation. So there were dams, there were rivers, rivulets, streams, and there were like wells, like those wells that never dry up. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any memories or stories associated with water sources in your area?
What I know is that sometimes it was quite hectic, because you find that the same water sources where donkeys, where like cattle will come and quench their thirst. So it wasn't always hygienic. There were very few boreholes. The non-governmental organizations or NGOs, they will make sure that they try to beat the cholera and whatever dysentery outbreaks by building actually for the communities some boreholes.
Right.
Yes.
In terms of crime and vice, what were some of the common crimes or vices in your area growing up? How did it impact your community?
I think, as I said, that it took like a village to raise a child. You see that you can have your journey maybe to somewhere. Some people, and I think you can still remember, I said somewhere pedestrians, you can actually just travel maybe from here to Joburg, and when it's like too late for you to continue, you could actually knock anywhere and they'll give you a place to sleep, and you could trust them with your life. Nowadays it's quite different. You can't just knock on people's houses and want to be accommodated. Worse still, and you can trust your life, with other people, even eating, dishes where you don't know how they've been prepared. So from that background, I'll say, there was not much of crime and vice, especially in missions, especially in villages. But theft at its highest, or maybe at its peak, could be found in cities. But it was manageable, it was not, and the police used to do their job like 100%. You would commit a crime and you face the music and you are behind, you are in jail. Nowadays you can just do something like even as killing a person, and you can run away to neighboring countries. The borders are now so porous and all that. So you see, in as much as some things can be done to contain this crime, especially with the political instability, financial instability, there is now prostitution is on rampant, and all sorts of unimaginable things happening nowadays. But to a certain extent, I think some are driven to crime because they have nothing else left to do to sustain themselves.
True. Do you have any thoughts or reflections on how crime have changed over time?
Yes, I think to a large extent you can see that there is a quite a huge difference between then and now, because Even parking, just parking, your car outside, there's no safety anymore. Actually, even when you are traveling to places you don't know, you can be a target because people can know by your mannerisms, complexion, and all that you don't belong here. It's only in few places where people are still human enough to accommodate others, where people still respect that what doesn't belong to me is never mine.
Alright. So let's talk about traditional rites. How did people typically participate in or observe these different traditional rites growing up?
Traditional rites, I think we have to zone in practices like Kwenda Kukomba or the Varemba tribe, where in August thereabout or from winter season they will go to be groomed, to be taught like the culture and all that. Girls will go to Komba, where you are taught like how to do stuff as a girl child and something like that. It wasn't like you just do whatever you feel right to do. You were taught mannerisms that are actually things that will sustain you beyond your own family, beyond your own home. Even if you were to be married or to marry, you know how to treat your family better, you know how to do stuff especially for family. So we had those cultural practices where people were exposed to how do you live like in a typical family, and if you face this challenge, how are you going to overcome that? But nowadays, people, of course, make a joke out of all that. They don't think it's important for some reasons. They think education matter more than whatever culture. So now it's not much of the intelligence in that.
I want to know your memories associated with these traditional rites.
I have never participated. It's unfortunate. I never participated in all that because, at the mission, some traditional rites, we were mainly a Christian family at the mission, because that's where you observe some Easter, holidays, where you observe holidays that matter, practices that matter, that will edify or maybe boost your faith. Not things that, the missionaries will see as you are too backward or something like that. So, but they mattered, to traditional families, but to most families whose eyes were opened to a life beyond being traditional, then it was quite a different thing. That's why you see there were people who would say, if there is too much, like, periods of the dry season, they will go Kuzame. Actually, my father's father was one of the delegates. They will get these traditional leaders and make a journey on foot to Matopo Sibulawa. That's like, so many kilometers there. Then they will do the enchantments, whatever the rites they had to perform there, to say whatever people are suffering, we are looking for rain, God have mercy in their own way. But what surprised me then when I thought this is all a joke, because remember I said I grew up at a mission and all that. Yeah. So my comparison think these ones, can't they know the light and all that? But one thing for sure, when they come back from that area from Zame, the rain will come with them, and it will be a season of plenty instead of the dry season.
All right. Let's talk about the health system in Zimbabwe back in the time. Were there any significant health challenges or diseases in your area at that time?
There wasn't much of, people now, they are on chronic medication, lots of them. Some it's beyond their control, and people seemed to be responsible, because remember, it was not a priority of junk type of foods. It was just living life normally, where you do not have these GMOs in the foods you eat, the reckless processing of some of the things that we put in our bodies food. There wasn't nothing like that. That's why you find that, people in villages and people in cities, you find healthier people, maybe politics and economy aside, you find that they have like, better weight management strategies because of the food that they eat. So the health system, actually at the mission there was a referral hospital, Mnene Hospital, where you see there were lots of ambulances. There was like something called the Utano Nutritional Village, where people who were also like, they couldn't afford much, they would go there and be fed. Some would stay there. There was like good doctors, expatriates, people who be trained in other countries just to come and serve. So medication wasn't a problem as it is today. Even today in some hospitals, if you go there, you won't even find a painkiller, no paracetamol, just the basics to kickstart, anyone's immune system. It will be like, you will be lucky to find that, and you can only find that maybe in private hospitals. So life back then, I think it was a life where I would love to go back to, because everything seemed like, whatever is a basic, it's a need in your life, you have it, unlike nowadays.
I want to know, was the health system back in the day better than it is now, or?
It was much better. It was much better because you had nurses who had nursing at heart. Nowadays, people rush to nursing because there are opportunities for them maybe to venture into international nursing at a later stage. Where people know nurses and doctors are better paid than other civil servants. So people just go into professions nowadays, not because they have a calling for it, they have a heart for it, but because it's lucrative business, they can get more and higher salaries. So you find that not every one who go to nursing actually is called to nurse. So you find that it's quite different then and now. There is actually a big margin.
Alright, I see.
Yes.
So the last topic that we are going to be diving into is religion. So do you have any memories or stories associated with your faith or spirituality growing up?
Yes, my father, I said, he was a headmaster, and he was privileged enough on Sundays to lead maybe a service at church, especially the AM one, the morning one, was mainly for learners, students and their teachers, or anyone who could fit in. So I grew up like, I don't want to say Christianity is a religion. I don't want to say I grew up a religious person, but I'm an ambassador for Christ. I know exactly the matters. I prioritize the leading of the Holy Spirit. I live a life of faith. Everything that I do is centered around Christ. I know that for sure that, God created me for a purpose, and that was instilled in me at a young age, and I grew up knowing that there's nothing that I cannot do. It doesn't matter where you place me in this world. It doesn't matter, no matter my gender, my accent. It doesn't matter maybe where I find myself in, because Christ in me is the hope of glory. So I can be anywhere and still thrive. So that was instilled in me at a very tender age, and I grew up knowing that the sky is the limit. So you find that, I grew up in Lutheran, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Zimbabwe. It was like a huge body, of believers, where they had even hospitals, good schools, and things like that. So it was a very big community. I remember the Sunday school, Michael, with my teacher, Sunday school teacher, Gwati. You march from the parish to the church, and we enjoyed it. It was quite plenty of food, plenty of good stuff, where we will be enjoying ourselves in the Word of God.
Wow. How did your faith or spirituality impact your daily life or sense of purpose?
It just instilled in me the staunch faith that I am going somewhere. Challenges come, yes, I'm a human being. Sometimes I pray and I don't get what I want, especially when my father died. I had, firm belief that God will never leave me nor forsake me. I prayed. I played some songs that I thought were lifting to his soul, but still he died. But that was something that shook my faith and belief in God. That of all the things that God could separate me from, I never thought my father would go early. So it sort of shook my faith in God. I've always known that he's a loving father. He can do the impossible for me. There's nothing too hard for him to do. But when I faced that, all hope was lost. I was like, if God loved me this much, if God really existed, why did I have to leave my father, especially in the way that he did? So there are some things that we come across, and sometimes we declare verses before they come. We think we are so strong in the word, but when the unimaginable happens, then that's where you are tested in your faith. That's where you seem like the whole world doesn't make sense. And at all that now, that's where you can say, God, you are still God, no matter what I face. You knew the beginning to the end that this was going to be the year that I'm going to lose my father, because he controls the seasons and all that. So sometimes, our walk of faith is never easy. Being a Christian, people even may take you for granted because they know you are easily like forgiving, something like that. So some will label you want to be too holier than thou and things like that. But one thing that I've never regretted is that, in all these things, I'm more than a conqueror in Christ. No matter what happens, no matter what, I'm a very prayerful person. I'm a very prayerful person. I know that, the one dependable person and someone I have in life is just God. He has my interested hearts, no matter the matter.
And I also want to know how you were able to overcome that experience.
The experience of knowing that, I'll never meet my father again. Yeah, that was quite another experience, especially now if my children are so close to their father. When it's Father's Day, when they are clinging to him, daughters and fathers, sometimes I can't be angry, I should be grateful, but it just I was so close to my father. Actually, growing up, Mama would say I breastfed on my father's breast. This part of my body and the teeth is all like my father's, and even the feet, and the love for education, the love for reading. Almost even today when my mom looks at me, will quite say, you are just your father, you remind me of your father. So it's something that, I have good memories of my father, and he died before I could spoil him as much as I wanted to. It shook me. Behind the closed doors, I'll be crying. When I come out, I'll appear like all is okay. Whereas still I didn't receive much counseling. I just trusted the Holy Spirit to be my counselor, and sometimes it gets difficult. I know people come to this world and they check out, but if you think in the way that my father checked out, sometimes you see that life just happens and life has to be lived on. We face challenges, we adjust and we move, because either way, what else can you do? If something presents itself before you, you just have to be strong. I had to be strong, especially for my mom, because he is a person who had grown together with my mom, and they met, I think, when they were teenagers. They spent more than 50 years together, and one day she just wakes up and that person is not there anymore. I had to be strong for my mom, because growing up she didn't, her parents died at a young age. So here my father was like everything. They loved each other. Shame, something that I wish I can even learn from that. It matters how we treat each other before we separate. My father was so dedicated to my mom, and my mom, even I uphold her for being the wife that she was, and my father for being the husband that he was to my mom.
Wow, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing your story. I was very inspired and I learned a lot from how you grew up. And for those who are watching, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And what would you like to say as we end this video?
I would love to say that it was quite a journey, the being taken aback, the nostalgia and everything, but I really loved the way you questioned me, very professional, and I think the world out there has learned quite a thing or two about then and now, because it's like worlds apart between when I grew up and especially the life I see today. So thank you guys.
Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for another video and bye.
Bye.